All right, we are live. We are not connected. Let me make sure. Yeah, record only. Okay, I was just making sure that we are not accidentally somehow on the 5 Deep podcast page or because this is not. Welcome, you guys. This is episode 2 of the Folly Forward podcast, me and Alicia's new show. And I want to get a little bit of business stuff out of the way. So, episode 1, we recorded on Skype. And I mentioned this in the second time we recorded on the YouTube video live. But Alicia was frozen. And so that's going to be coming out as audio over the next couple weeks and audio only on all platforms, no video. And then this episode, you guys will be seeing as the first episode on our Folly Forward podcast YouTube page. So, and then from here on out, this is where they will be uploaded. And then the audio will come out ever so often. You'll hear in the first episode when you finally listen to it that it'll be coming out on all platforms: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Anchor, all the top platforms. So you won't have any excuse to not be able to find us. So I can't wait till you take a listen to that. But today I wanted to get in, and we had a little powwow before I hit record. So we were both on the same page about this. But I have been dealing with, on my end individually as the bliss broker and as Harmony, I've been dealing with growth from a space of self-identity and like really trying to figure out who I am as a person, and really understanding that just because I was born into this body and I spend every single day with this body, that you would think I would automatically know myself better than anyone. And I feel like that's absolutely been false. I feel like I have put all of my energy, my whole life, into others, and most of that being romantic relationships, and me really wanting so desperately to have my own family and create my own stable household, that I didn't have time to focus on myself. I obviously had an overall knowledge of who I was, and I'm sure Alicia will agree too, but I think there's been so many nooks and crannies in doing the work of personal development that have come out that have been quite shocking, that I just assumed these were all characteristics, and we have characteristics from the time that we're young, and we think that they're locked and loaded, and they're like set in stone. We're going to be like that for the rest of our lives. And that's absolutely not the case. Like I believe that we're here to evolve every day. And, sometimes that means evolving in ways that might shock you. There's things that I do now, and there's ways that I have thoughts on, like perceptions and moral compass and things like that I never thought I would have. Like I never thought I would like reading books. That's not something that I thought I would have a book and a bookmark sitting on my nightstand. I did not think that was my deal. But so just something as simple as that. But a lot of that is rooted in my childhood on Folly Beach, and just how absolutely chaotic that was. And so right out of the gate, from the time that I can remember, I was in survival mode. And you can't grow from survival mode. You're so busy just making sure that, I would say mostly my survival mode, and I'm going to segue to you here in a second, Alicia, that when you're in survival mode, you don't have any free time to think about, what do I want to be when I grow up? How do I want to show up in the world? What are my likes and hobbies? Like, I had some idea of the music that I liked and things like that, but I didn't know who I was. I have conversations with women now that are my age that were like, oh yeah, I read that book when I was in 6th grade. I'm like, what? I wasn't even able to do my homework in 6th grade because I had so much chaos going on at home that if I even made it to the bus without skipping school, that was a win for me. You know what I mean? Struggling to find a dime to buy a milk at lunch. Like, woo, if I'd managed to get that done, that was a win. So the thought of who was Harmony it's not come until right now, like literally the last couple years, and more clearly like the last couple months, if I'm being honest. So I had a talk with Alicia before we hit record. Like, let's talk a little bit about the foundation on Folly Beach and how that applies to us today and the way we connect with other people, and, romantically, friendship wise, co-working space, whatever. And I'm going to let you go first. So you're like, walk me through an average day in your childhood on Folly Beach. What did that look like for you?
Well, I agree with you. I think that for most of my childhood and young adulthood even, that I was in survival mode due to the chaos that was going on, not only in my house, which there was a lot, but also in our tiny little island. When you grow up in a small town, everybody knows everything. And you can't even ride your bike on, I remember us riding bikes, and, we lived on the east side of Folly Beach, split by the center street that goes down the main drive through the beach. If we were caught riding bikes, at least if I was caught riding bikes on west side of the beach, my mom would know about it before I even got home. So it was like things like that. So you felt like you're a little bit under the microscope. However, I did appreciate the freedom that we had to sort of roam and explore and do things. But, growing up with two parents that worked full-time jobs, and their main goal when they got off work was to come home and start drinking. And so that was, a daily thing. And when I say parents, I did want to, kind of explain one thing that you'd mentioned in our episode, the first episode, which is I was born in Michigan. My mom and my biological father got married, and she divorced him within a year, left him, stayed with some family in Ohio briefly while I was a couple years old. And then we moved to Isle of Palms when I was in pre-K, lived in a trailer park.
Isle of Palms is the island over as the crow flies. It's the island. I guess that would be what?
Actually, we lived
East?
in Sullivan's Island because, it goes Sullivan's Island, then Isle of Palms. So it was Sullivan's Island that we lived in. Yeah.
And side note, I'll be popping some images of Charleston for you to get an eyeful on the Folly Girls podcast Instagram page. So I'll be sure to drop all that. I'll pin all that down below so you guys can give us a follow on Instagram and get a visual of some of the things. And I'm going to tap in to some old photos I have of us from the beach with Alicia's approval, obviously, but I'll be posting some old photos on the Instagram. Anyway, go ahead.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, my childhood was living with a single mom at an early age after going through, I didn't know my biological father. And so we lived in a trailer while she was a nurse, and I had a babysitter that came. And when I was in first grade, which there's some trauma from that, which is, another whole episode, I'm sure. But,
oh, yeah, we've got that in common. We'll talk about that for sure.
Yeah. In first grade, my mom met my stepdad, who I call dad for the remainder until he died. And that's who, when I'm talking about Folly, it was my mom and my stepdad. So they met, they got married, and we moved into Folly Beach. And
how did they meet? I don't know if you've ever told me how they met.
I honestly don't remember. I think it was mutual friends. Buddy and Nancy.
God, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for their first meeting.
Yeah. So, I don't recall, and I can't ask them because they're both deceased. But, so from second grade on, I had a stepfather and a mom living this life of going to work every single day and coming home, and they start drinking and they're hanging out. And my house was a very open house. Where people knew that if they needed a place to crash, if they wanted to come and party, they could just come on over to my house because everybody would be hanging out. My parents even had like a little joking, one of those big mason jars, and it said kids college fund because they had always had beer in the fridge and people would just come and start drinking. So it was like their beer fund. But, so from an early age, growing up with people drinking and partying and staying up all night was just one of those things that was like a normal thing. Like it was normalized for me. I didn't know any different. I didn't know that that's not what other people were doing all the time. I did learn at a young age that if I wanted anything, I was going to have to go work for it. So I started babysitting at a young age, and then at 14 started washing dishes.
And speaking of that, Alicia, like I want y'all to know her parents were very high functioning. Like they both were successful in both their careers, right? I don't know when your mom opened the laundromat. It was the main laundromat on Folly Beach called Suds and Surf. And trust me, we went there a bunch to get quarters. She'd see us coming like, don't ask me for any fucking quarters.
Because we wanted to go play video games.
We wanted to go play video games, which we'll obviously be talking about because that's a whole video games and our specific favorite video games is a whole topic of conversation in its own right. And then your dad, very successful career working for the power company. So they weren't just floundering about like laying on the couch all day long. They were very high functioning alcoholics, like respectfully.
Yeah. And again, I didn't know as a child that there was anything wrong with it. I just thought that's what people did. They go to work and they come home and they hang out and they drink and on their friends, they party with, on the weekends, they party with all their friends. But I learned the value of money at such a young age because I knew if I wanted a new, shirt, not that my parents didn't buy me things, but I knew that if I wanted something, I was going to have to work for it. So I started waiting tables and serving and,
Where'd you do that?
So the first, I cannot remember. My parents had a friend. Man, I can't even remember, so long ago. But it was one of the restaurants on Folly Beach. I washed dishes first. Then I got a job hostessing initially, because I think you had to wait till you're 16 to serve. Is that what it was? 16 or
I
17?
don't remember. I was working at the Sunspot, which was in the same shop. It was the same shopping or block as your mom's Suds and Surf. So
Yeah,
you're facing Suds and Surf, Chill and Grill. And
yeah,
then now I think on the corner, it's a big sports bar with the open
yeah,
roof. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah,
But okay. So the very below, remember Jay
yeah.
used to live in that apartment. Okay. So like right below, and shout out to Jay if he's watching. I need to send him the link because I know he'd probably enjoy this, but he's one of our childhood friends from the beach. So anyway, the building on the corner there at Center Street across from McKevelin's was the Sunspot. And that was a restaurant, vegetarian restaurant that the people that owned the Angelfish on James Island opened. And that was the
Yeah.
first place that I ever started working. And I know I was not of legal age.
Yeah,
So I get it. I relate.
yeah. So
I should remember where that was.
I cannot remember the name. I mean, the name has changed so many times since then, but it was a restaurant. And then, the other side gigs that you and I both had going on was I used to volunteer to stock the shelves at the little corner grocery store with Mr. Pete. And he would give us store credit. If we would just go in there and stock the shelves for him, he'd be like, okay, well, then you can have a little store credit, get yourself a soda or something.
Oh, y'all, when it was hot outside and we would we're going to go stock the walk-in. That would be the nicest thing because it's so cool in there.
Yeah, we would just hang out and laugh and joke, but we'd
scare the shit out of people when they try to get drinks.
I remember that. Yeah, he was such a nice old man too that, just let us do that. And then I used to spend a lot of time at Ocean Sports Surf Shop with Bill and Betty Sue and, would help them do things so that I could maybe get a little store credit here or there. So, I hustled at a young age knowing that I was going to have to carve my way out in the world of if I wanted something. So that's something that I still take with me.
I can't speak for you, but us doing that, like between Mr. Pete's and going and sweeping up Pelican Pizza with Sean.
Oh yeah,
remember?
Yeah.
And I mean, the slew of things to me personally, it didn't seem like, oh, I need to go. It was just like something to do.
Yeah.
We weren't going to sit home and watch TV. I mean, we had our fair share of that and loved to play our Nintendo, or Alicia's Nintendo. Hours and hours and hours and hours, Duck Hunt and Zelda and all the things. But I really enjoyed the hustle. I really enjoyed the going and tapping into all these different restaurants and connecting with people. And how much fun was that?
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
It didn't seem like work. We were making do. We were making it happen.
Yeah. And then, I'd come home and my parents would be drinking and hanging out. Now, so we also have to discuss how there's pre-Hurricane Hugo and post-Hurricane Hugo.
Yeah. We're in pre right now, right?
Yeah, we're in pre still. Okay. I mean, some of this still happened after, but, growing up in that sort of environment definitely had a lasting impact on me. The normalization of partying is it's okay. Everybody who just parties and drinks and you do your thing. And, but the other thing that really impacted me, and I think it's what impacted me as a parent the most, is that I grew up playing sports and being very active in school. I started playing sports in middle school all the way up to high school, and my parents never came to one game. And I played multiple sports. I played basketball, track, cross country, played soccer one season. And my parents
that's about the time we parted ways, I think. That's when I went with Amy and that group of partiers, and you went the more academic, jock route, right?
Yeah. So that would have probably been
all the cheerleaders, and I was I was making fun of them.
I think it was once we got to high school, we kind of parted a little bit in that regard. Because again, I was every day after school playing, some sort of sport practice. And there's another female that we grew up with. Her name's Amy on Folly Beach. And so we played a lot of the same sports. And so many times we were left at the school because both of our parents forgot to come pick us up. And her parents had a similar lifestyle. I think it was a Folly Island lifestyle where everybody goes to work and they come home and they start partying. And so we laugh about it now, but we used to have to bum rides off of people that were older than us, that were coming back to Folly, or we took cabs home a lot of times. We'd have to walk down. So remember how, like, if you walked out of the high school and you made a right and there was some alley that was like a sketchy little area? I forget what.
Oh, yeah. That's where everybody bought drugs.
Yeah. But there was a payphone there.
Yeah.
So we would walk over there and call one of our parents, and they would call a taxi cab and come get us. I mean, that happened so many times we can't even remember. We're just sitting.
And meanwhile, while you're doing that, that's where we used to go and buy booze. It's that same spot where the payphone was. We would go in there and get people to buy us beer, or sometimes we would sneak and get away with it. But yeah, isn't that so crazy how our life went whoop?
Yeah. So, that made me more hyper focused on making sure I was there for every single one of my daughter's practices and games. Not practice, like I would drop her off for practice, but games. Yeah. I rarely ever missed a game, and that might have been because I had to either work or I was in grad school, but only like less than a handful of times that
because
ever happened.
You didn't have anybody there. Now, at the time when you were experiencing that and nobody was coming, did the solidarity that you had with your other friends, their parents weren't showing up as well, like ease it? Was it hurtful at the time, or is it something just looking back on that was just like the way it was?
I think it was like 50-50. Like I did ask, like, come on, like, don't y'all want to come to one of my games? Of all the sports I played for all these years. And both of them were like, well, we've worked all day long. We just want to come home and relax. We don't want to get in the car and have to drive. They would have had to not drink to get in the car and drive to one of my games.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, that like now us talking about it. Huh?
I said, I think everybody drank and drove back then.
Well, probably, but I don't know.
But like, that was too far to go, I think, way down that windy two-lane road.
It's too far for them to go. What is it, like 15, 20 minutes?
So when you say that they were drinking, like the way I remember what was going on in the house, because I was there a lot, spent the night a lot, because I had my own set of chaoses going on at my house. But when they were drinking, they were power drinking. Like I remember them straight up going through a case of beer.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think on like weeknights they were drinking that much, but on the weekends, oh hell yeah, they drink a lot. I mean, I can't tell you how many because I wasn't counting. I wasn't paying attention. I was at practice, and I would come home, and so it was chaotic because there was always so much going on, and there was often outbursts. So I didn't know what domestic violence was when I was a kid. I just would come home, and there'd be broken glass places and some blood sometimes. And a few times my mom picked me up and said, we're leaving. And we went and got a hotel room at Folly Marina, for the night. So that happened a few times. Never really got to the underlying reason of what happened because my mom was very private and didn't want to talk about stuff.
Now, who do you think did the abuse? Both, or because I remember hearing them screaming a lot, and I remember them fighting, and I remember things getting thrown and glass being broken, but I don't remember like seeing anything, like anybody doing anything. It was like all like it was very quick or whatever. I don't remember seeing the act of anybody hit anybody.
I never saw any of it. I heard them screaming before and yelling. And then I oftentimes would find broken glass and such. And I just remember this one time coming home and seeing a bunch of blood and broken glass. I didn't know where my dad was. And my mom was like, all right, we got to go. We are leaving right now. So
and you knew he was your stepdad from when you were what, 5? So you were very emotionally attached to him. Yeah. It's not like he just came into your life when you were 15 and you were like, whatever, I can take him or leave him. Like you really loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting because then you're just like anybody growing up in a household where both their biological parents, like they've got an emotional attachment to both. And so you don't know whose side to take. You know, there's a trauma in that in itself, trying to figure out, well, who do I stand up for? And I can't like it. Even right now, I feel like just remembering it, the body keeps a score, right? Physiological body memory I remember being at your house one night. This is post Hugo because we were up on the top floor. They had added the top floor edition. And I remember we were in the twin bed going to sleep. I remember it was a school night. And I remember them fighting. And I just remember you getting up out of bed. And, God damn it. And then you out the door, down the steps, into the kitchen, because the kitchen was right below where Alicia's bed was. And she just went in and was like, schooled them. She's like, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm trying to sleep. Like, go the fuck to bed. And they were both like standing there looking at her. That was high school age. I remember because
Yeah.
again, post Hugo.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just get to a point where you've had enough. And at that point, I think you had kind of taken control.
Yeah. I think
You were,
it was probably a school night or maybe. I mean, I don't even
it was.
know.
I remember it was. I remember very, very, very vividly. I remember it was a school night.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, our house dynamic was also set up perfectly for people who like to party. When the hurricane hit, our house was 75% damaged. One whole wall, it was a 2-story house, got bashed from a chimney that was next door, and the whole wall was taken out, lots of water damage. So our first floor was declared inhabitable. So my parents had to build a 3rd floor. But what they did was, because there was outside steps already going to that 2nd level and inside steps, they went ahead and added the 3rd floor, and that there was no inside steps to get upstairs from the 2nd to 3rd. They had the outside steps. So they pretty much hung out and partied all the time. And I could literally come home from work or school and go upstairs, and I would never even see them. And I would just walk by everybody hanging out and partying on the middle floor. So that's what you were referring to, is when we were upstairs, because my bedroom was right there. It was that first one on the right.
Yeah. So pre-Hurricane Hugo, the bedrooms were, you and your brother's bedroom were downstairs. That's where we'd come in through the conveniently, you had your own access, your own entrance, entrance.
And that's a side note. So my stepdad had a son that was a few years older than me. And he actually had a daughter too that was a lot older than us, but she never moved in with us. So when my parents got married, it was me and my stepbrother who lived. So it was the 4 of us in this house. But
always a lot of freedom, always a lot of privacy, always a lot of, we could sneak out very easily. They had their own thing going on. We were downstairs. It had its own entrance. And and I remember that 3rd floor being added post Hugo. Like, I just have a very vivid memory of your stepdad or your dad sitting on the porch with the doors open, looking out. He's on the top floor. He's sitting with his feet up, his bare feet up, in his jeans, that he always wore jeans 365 days out of the year. No shirt sometimes, looking out at the water with the music blaring. Do you remember him going through his Michael Jackson phase?
Yeah.
He
mostly listened to like
Jimmy
Buffett and that kind of stuff, like country.
He did love some Michael Jackson, though.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
it's crazy the things we remember. Yeah. So in your life, it was just a lot of here, there, everywhere.
Chaos, a lot of chaos, and not knowing what you're coming home to, walking around on eggshells. So we were in survival mode, and for different reasons. For most of my life, I feel like. Actually, and when I look back, I think I've been in survival mode most of my life now, but in different types, different ways. And so I definitely feel like that shaped me, this chaotic upbringing of not knowing who's going to be there, what I'm walking into, and also feeling as if, I wouldn't say that they never made me feel like I wasn't important. It's just that unless I was home, I was out of sight, out of mind.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the same that was going on at my house. Like, I did always know my mom. My mom's amazing. I'm going to preface it with that. Like, she's one of the coolest people, if not she's my muse. I just think she's fantastic and would want to be best friends with her, even if I wasn't related to her. So she was trying to kind of like make her way. She was doing her best. I don't put any blame on her whatsoever. She was just like any of us, trying to figure her life out, and would attach to these people, and had her own set of hurts and things going on. But because there was chaos between her and her boyfriend going on at that time, pre-Hugo, I spent a lot of time running the streets in survival mode. And I didn't realize until really these last couple years with that book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is about the way our body holds on to trauma. And the best example I can give right now of that would be, you growing up, let's say you grow up in a place that has a lot of gun violence, and you are 30 years later, you're walking through a very beautiful, calm park, and somebody's car goes by and it backfires. You're gonna hit the ground probably. If you grew up around that, your body's gonna but the body remembers trauma. And so there's so many scenarios that of just like being in bed and you know how sometimes when you're scared, say you're watching a movie or something and you're watching a thriller and something's going on and you realize before you know it that you're in your bed or on the couch and your body's tensed up. That's kind of how I remember most of my childhood. No shit. Like looking back on it, especially, like I feel like I was just constantly on edge. And it really hasn't been until recently that I've put two and two together and how I'm still like I'm at the bare beginning of trying to shake that. And it doesn't mean that I'm walking around scared to death all day, but when you do live in survival mode, like it just blew my mind the other day when I read that when you grow up in a household of chaos, peace triggers you. And that really just touched me in a way. I know I've read it before. I know I have, but I just literally saw it like a few days ago and I was like, whoa, like it hit differently,
Mm-hmm.
that growing up around all that chaos, braided through that chaos was freedom like no other child had really at that time. I
Yeah.
mean, we did, but we could literally do anything.
Yeah.
And it was one of those kind of things like we weren't going to really get in that much trouble. It's not like we got beat. We got grounded, but I mean, that didn't really ever last long. You know what I mean? Unless you were Valerie, poor thing. She was always on restriction.
Yeah. Wasn't her dad a cop though?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. I
why.
think he was a cop, but remember, we called it scruction because she was
Yeah.
always on restriction. She could never go anywhere. But for the most part, like if we got grounded, it was like whatever, like 24 hours, 48 hours, they forgot about it. So we had all these awesome freedoms that were simultaneously going on during all this chaos. So like to me at this point I'm at right now, I'm resolving that. I'm like trying to appreciate the awesome freedoms and the fun of Folly Beach, but at the same time working through all this crazy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I feel like on some level, and that's kind of what I want to ask you next. Like I feel like on some level that has stuck with me. And it really is the direct reason I've found it really hard to connect to people where I have that kind of mindset, like I don't want to put anybody out or, oh, we'll just go eat wherever you want to eat. Or, I'm not like that anymore, but I felt as though if I showed up as a real full-fledged person with my own opinions and my own thoughts and my own this, that, and the other thing, it was going to be too much. And I felt like I would be more likable the more out of sight I was. So the more accommodating I felt like I was in relationships, specifically with men, I felt like the more lovable I would be, because I always felt like on some way, even though I knew my mom loved me, because she had so much going on, I felt as though I was a burden a lot of times. And I feel like when you grow up feeling like you're an afterthought to a lot of people, especially your parents, or you feel like you're a burden in some way, that carries over into your adult life, and it definitely carries into your relationships where you're trying to get close with somebody. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize it, as I mentioned in, pre-recording, like I didn't realize how much that has formed me into who I am and my characteristics and the way that something as simple as not liking to talk on the phone. Like I don't, like I want to connect with you when I want to connect with you. And when I'm
That's
not
funny because we
in
used
the
to
mood,
spend hours talking on the phone. We'd be watching TV at each other's. I'd be at my house watching TV. You'd be at your house watching TV, and we'd be talking on the phone.
well,
With
I
the
think
remember those long ass cords?
yeah, that was pre-cordless phone. And even though they had cordless phone, I didn't have one at my house yet. But yeah, we were each other's safe place. I mean,
Yeah.
we for sure, we both had, not only did we have all this crazy shit going on in our homes, so we had that to like, we immediately got each other. We were like soul sisters right out of the gate because we both had bullshit going on. We attached to each other. Like you were my safe place without knowing what a safe place was. It was
Yeah.
just me and you hanging out. And we always
Yeah.
found things to laugh about. We still went to the roller rink every Friday and still, found all the fun things to do. But I think it's been interesting to me how trauma hits harder the older you get. Like you could try to, be like, oh, it's a long time ago, I don't have to deal with that. Not if it's a direct result of how you're connecting or not connecting
Yeah.
to people.
Unresolved trauma is going to remain unresolved until you actually face it and try to work through it.
So do you feel like if you had an example of how the chaos that was going on in your house back then, is there an example of how that applies to you today? Or have you worked through all that?
I think I'll always be working through a lot of the stuff that happened in my life, because I've had a lot of loss and tragedy and trauma. But I think I think that's a day-to-day process. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be like, oh, I'm healed and everything is great and I'm amazing. There's always going to be something I'm looking back at and going, maybe that is a trigger from something that happened to me at a young age. I think that a lot of the stuff I went through is applicable to my life. Outside of, I got married at a young age and had a daughter, and my husband was in the military. He joined the Navy, and we got moved around, and we were stationed in Italy when he was killed in a helicopter crash. And so I had a very stable, loving home life. Stable as in the three of us were together, but we did move around.
How old was Maddie when he passed?
She was 4.5 and I was 27. So, we got married at 23. So, I transitioned into having this like healthy family. Everything is great. Like I had it all. And then he died. And I was left in shambles of wondering like how I'm supposed to start over and what I'm supposed to do. And I think the impact after that, from not only my childhood, but losing my husband at a young age, impacted my relationships after that, because I took everything so slow. If I ever met, so when I met somebody, I waited like weeks before, like between dates, and like 6 months before they could even consider meeting Maddie. So I took everything. So that impacted me because I had this chaos upbringing. And then I met this amazing man who gave me everything. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know how to process. I don't know how to proceed because I'm so scared. It could be like the relationship my dad and my mom had. So that definitely impacted, but it was a combination of both.
And do you think any of it had to do with maybe like the fear of I'm sure there's so many things, like, wait, you're still in love with Pete and you're still like processing all of that, and it was like abruptly yanked from you. But then also, if I get with somebody else, are they going to be yanked from me too? Like, I can't even imagine all the questions that must be going through your head.
Yes. And oddly enough, I ended up, the first 2 relationships that I was in after my husband died were both active duty military. So yeah, there was that in the back of my head, like, oh my gosh, something bad could happen to either one of them. But it was also a safety thing, like having gotten married at a young age and being immersed in that military culture. You have each other's backs and it becomes sort of like a family. And so here I am after he died, having to move back to the United States. And I don't have family to go to, in a sense, because, my dad had died when I was 18. And my mom had moved to the Florida Keys, sold the house I grew up in, moved to the Florida Keys, and was not wanting to move back to Charleston. And I did not want to move to the Florida Keys and raise my child. At the time, she was 4.5. So I didn't really have like a place to go. I always, refer to that point in my life as I never had a plan B. Like I thought Pete was it. I didn't have to have a plan B.
Yeah.
And so I picked a new place on a map, and Virginia Beach, Virginia it was. And that's pretty much where I've stayed. There's been some little offshoots of
we'll get into our little adventures. Yeah. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there. I want to go there.
So, but this has been primarily my home since he died in 2003. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could go again. We could talk about this for days. I mean, there's so many things, but as I mentioned to you pre-recording, like it's been interesting to me as I get older, just having an awareness of my existence. I know that sounds really crazy, but like I really have been on autopilot my entire life. And I've just been going through the motions and didn't really put a whole lot of thought into why I was doing what I was doing. I just was literally on autopilot. So now to take the time, and I'm not saying I didn't have moments where I didn't look inward and like have conversations with myself, but I self-medicated. There's that version of Harmony that I love very dearly that served a purpose, that she still follows me everywhere, that, my self-medication it was a way of surviving what I was going through. And so all of my loss and my dad not being there and all these things that you guys will learn about me over time, um, it just compounded. And as you know, being somebody who's a grief specialist, that's kind of like your thing, is helping people with grief. Grief is compounding. And it's just the weight of the world was on my shoulders to a point where, that's why I started working on myself, because everybody's got a breaking point and you have to be sick of your life as is. You have to suffer, I believe, to a certain point before you're ready to make any changes in your life. And that's why some people don't ever change. Like, for whatever reason, the suffering becomes their MO. They're used to it. Or the suffering gets to be so much that out of desperation, they're just like, I need a different life. I need to experience life differently.
Mhm.
So that's what it was for me. Just like really over these last, like, all the things that have happened to me in a short amount of time. Married February of 2019, separated in like September, October of 2020. And then, divorced February of 2022. So like, is that right? Yeah. It's just crazy to me. And then so one thing after the other, after the other, after the other, you get to a point where you're like, okay, I can no longer, like, even if it's on a subconscious level, I can no longer blame this happened to me, that happened to me, I didn't have a dad, dot, 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 ba, ba. I can no longer blame all those external events. It's time to, like, do the work and, like, figure out, what role do I have in this stuff? How can I have a full, whole life and a full, whole existence and really feel satisfied with my life if I'm not doing more? And how many people do you think are walking around the planet right now, Alicia, that are on a hamster wheel? They don't take the time to think about what happened to them when they were 5,
Yeah.
Is molding who they are today. I mean, most people don't do that. But for the select few that are the chosen ones that are like, no, you got to figure out who you are and why you are and, do the work and meditate and all that shit. It's like, okay, well, for whatever reason, I was one of the chosen ones, and not to say any group's better than the other. Sometimes being naive, there's some bliss in that.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, I think.
when
Yeah,
you
go
don't know,
ahead.
you don't know. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's and once you know, you can't go backwards. That's
Yeah.
like what I'm trying to, like, preface everybody with. Once you know and there's another way, you can't unlearn that.
Well, like you said, I think there's a lot of people that are out there going through the motions and they're just feeling stuck, but they don't know how to get unstuck. And I think a lot of it is rooted in fear. And if it's not fear, it's shame.
Yeah.
I think fear and shame are preventing people from looking inward and talking to their inner self, that inner child that was hurt at 5 years old, or that inner, 11-year-old that, there's so many things that could have happened to you in your lifetime, right? And you have to form some sort of protection around it in order to keep going, right? So a lot of times people just shove it down. They don't want to talk about it. There's shame against what, they feel shame about what happened. And they're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to make any changes because what will people think if they start making changes?
Yeah, and how about all the group of people that, like, even if it's on a subconscious level, most of the time it is, that are taking blame for the things that happen to them. And then as things continue to happen to them over and over and over and over and over again, their whole life, that just becomes their normal, to take the
Mm-hmm.
blame for all the shit that happens to you. I literally have had conversations in doing my inner child work. I personified and created, like, not to say I, like, can see her or anything, but in my mind's eye, I can see little Harmony. And I have had, intentionally, for journaling and things like that, conversations with this little girl. And I just chose to, instead of shoving her in a closet and leaving her there to, be in the fetal position crying because she's lonely and scared and hopeless and all these things, I went into the closet and got her by the hand and pulled her out of there and started having conversations with her, in the sense that through, meditation, through walking in the woods for 2-3 hours at a time, multiple times I've been in conversation with my higher self or with whatever thing I'm trying to teach myself at the time. And I will have to stop doing my movement, my run, whatever, and sit down and, like, just cry, because I've I'm forcing myself to connect with these older versions of myself, so that I can understand how they apply to me today.
Well,
And
that's
I
very
think
healthy.
yeah, and I didn't, at first when you start doing that, you're like, am I batshit crazy that I'm having mentally I'm having conversations with young Harmony and like asking her what all those years that I was self-medicating and ignoring you, what do you need from me now? And that's what I've been doing. There's been two things I've been doing to get to where I am right now. I've been very aware of Harmony and, the one who suffered the trauma at various ages. I've had mental conversations with her, the different versions of her. And then I've also become connected to the woman I want to be when I'm 60, 70 years old. And what would she tell me if I had an opportunity to have a conversation with 70-year-old Harmony at 46 years old? Like, how can I show up today to be the best version of myself tomorrow?
Yeah.
So in order to do that, it's really been happening organic, you guys. It's like there's no fucking roadmap for how to do this growth thing. Everybody's way is going to be different. But what I love about the conversations that we're having here is that we never know that you or I are going to say something, or both of us, during an episode, and somebody's going to hear it and go, she's having a conversation with Harmony when she was 5. What the fuck is she talking about? Like, it's really just honoring that little girl that got hurt, broken, molested, whatever the hell, insert whatever story you want, and letting her speak. And for a long time, I didn't do that. I didn't let her speak. I just poured alcohol down my throat and hoped to drown her out. But it's all I knew how to do at the time. So it's no judgment to anybody who's self-medicating in any way. Whatever it is that you do to make it through a day, Godspeed. I'm here for you in that way, because you have to learn. You have to fucking survive the best that you can. But I guess I've gotten to a point now where I've turned a corner. I don't want to self-medicate anymore. I don't want to numb myself out. I want to deal with it head on. And that's a really hard but awesome place to be.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to get to that point, to know that, hey, I still have a lot of work to do, and it's going to require me to do some deep processing of things that happened to me in my childhood, and how I'm going to not only look at it through a different lens now that I'm an adult, but how am I going to accept what's happened to me? How am I going to let go of that shame that I might have been carrying? And how am I going to not only forgive the person that may have harmed me, but also forgive myself for all the things that I have done as a way of coping with what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot there, right? I mean, we could talk about it for days, and people do. And I'm happy that we both have the drive and the desire to get on here and do this as often as we can, to share our stories with people, because like it still lingers too. Like, no shit. The guy that molested me when I was I lived in Quail Run when it happened. And I was
that was what, middle school?
No, I think I was in like fourth grade. At the elementary school my house was literally right across from the elementary school right there. And he was in high school. He went to James Allen High School, which I think was Fort Johnson High School at the time. So you see the age difference, and I remember how I mean, it's coming back to me more and more every day as I meditate and like journal on it and stuff. It's really, I'm when I say I'm like, it's coming back to me, I'm like exponentially, like in the last couple months. Which has been interesting. And I'm sure a lot of that is I'm sussing that out because of the work that I'm doing. I know that I've got to get it out before I'm ever going to be able to release it,
Yeah.
But he, how interesting. I guess there's something on his end because of who he is as a person, that he sent my mom a text message on New Year's Eve this last year wishing her a Happy New Year. Even though he knows that he's got to know on some level that she knows, because over the years, like fucking Chinese water torture, he's tried to reach out to me and I have blocked him every time. And he reached out to me again in like 2018. And I actually felt so safe with my ex-husband that I forwarded the message to him. I screenshot it and forwarded it to him. And he lost his shit when he read it. It was this big, long think about you and all the things. I'm like, what? Like, so I mean, when I read it, I couldn't even process it. Like, I'm like, why are you trying to get in touch with me? I don't understand. We are not friends. You know what I mean? Um, so I forwarded it to my ex-husband and he read it and messaged him back, basically threatening to kill him if he ever tried to reach out to me again. Like, I know she said to me in detail exactly everything that you did to her. And, um, I mean, pretty much threatened to kill the guy if he ever messaged me again. So
Hmm.
he's not ever messaged me again. But I mean, interestingly enough, like what would motivate him to text my mom just like a couple months ago and say Happy New Year? Like,
Yeah.
it's people don't understand the batshit crazy stuff that we as humans are dealing with day to day. That
Yeah.
we don't walk
You
around with
know what I
sandwich boards on us, like saying, "Hey, this is what my struggle is today." And that's why I
yeah.
think it's good that we get on here and talk about it because I want other people to see that you're gonna be fine, you
Yeah.
know?
You know what would be healing for you, I think? Or, I mean, it might be something for you to consider at least, is, you don't want to have any contact with him, but you mentioned that you've been meditating and this has been coming up, right? Have you thought about maybe like writing him a letter? You don't have to give it to him, but just as a way to express all the things you want to say to him, to get it out, to help you heal. I know it's something that I had to do, because when I was molested by my babysitter in first grade, we lived in a trailer park, my mom and I. It was, you know, uh, she was my babysitter. She told me not to tell anyone, and I didn't know what
Mm.
to do, and it just kept happening. And I finally got the courage enough to tell my mom. And I look back and I was like, when you are taken advantage of by an older person at a young age, you tend to have trust issues,
Mm.
growing up, and intimacy issues, especially if you've
Mhm.
been molested or sexually assaulted.
Oh my
And so
gosh, yeah.
I had to get to a point where, in order for me to let that go, and it came up to me like all the flashbacks and the thoughts that I had not even, no, I never think about it. It was when I was so young. What was I, 6? It was so long ago that for me, I didn't never really processed or anything. And so it came to me on a hike one time, and I was like, oh my gosh. It came to me and I was like, I have to write about it right now. And I wrote her a letter forgiving her, like saying all the things that what you did to me was wrong, but I forgive you because I have to have peace in my heart, and I have to also let this go.
How did you know okay, so it came to you on a hike. Big ups to outdoor movement, y'all. Woot woot.
Yes,
I'm telling
serious.
you, it's
Outdoor
healing.
movement is so healing.
Go outside. Um, so it came to you just like drop down as a download into your brain. This happened.
Hmm.
And then you had the wherewithal to think to send her a letter. Like, that is huge.
Oh, I didn't send it to her. I just
Oh,
wrote it.
or writer
I wrote.
one. Writer one.
I don't even know what her name is. I mean, this was it was so long ago. I remember the experience because it happened multiple times, and it imprinted on me something. But it was something I stored away because I never had to see her again. We moved. That's probably, I wonder again, like if either of my parents were alive, I'd ask them, like, what's the correlation of what time y'all got married and we moved to Folly Beach? Because it felt like it was immediately afterward, but I don't know. Um,
Yeah, our time is so it's obscure when you're little.
yeah. So but it was healing for me as a way of processing, not only to be able to say what I couldn't say back then to her at 6, that this is wrong. I know what you're doing is wrong, but I also still forgive you because, again, you mentioned this earlier. I believe the greatest thing in life is inner peace. It's not what we can have, what we can do, the pleasures of the world. It's the inner peace that we can have with ourselves that is going to be able to make us the happiest that we can be. And
Yeah,
so
and then when you do have that inner peace, everything's even that much more awesome.
yeah,
How
I mean,
external
seriously.
to you. Mm.
Yeah. So that's just my thought. It helped me, and it might help you if that you're open to that. And it might help somebody else who's listening. That sometimes you can't go back and find that person and ask them, don't talk to me anymore, or why did you do this? You're never going to know the whys of a lot of the things that happen to you, but that doesn't mean that you can't process it. You can't say the things that you want to say, even if you never see that person again, even if you can't give them the letter, but you can get it out by writing. Or you could, there's other ways. You could even crumple that paper up and throw it away, burn it, whatever. You don't have to keep it. but just get the thoughts to paper so that you can process how it is you were feeling and how you're feeling, how you felt about it then, how you're feeling about it now, so that you can let go.
Well, I think what I ultimately, like, I'm torn because, over the years, um, God, there's so many thoughts that I could say about this because it is just so jacked up when something like that happens to you. But he came in and out of our lives on Folly Beach, like, until I remember going at one point, he was dating a woman. I was probably 20 years old, 19 or 20, and he was living in North Charleston. He was dating a woman that had a daughter. And I went and babysat while they went out on a date. I remember doing that. I remember him coming over to the house on Folly Beach when we lived on 4th Block. I remember him driving over there. I was probably, I don't know. It was probably 13, 14. And I don't know, do the math. What was he, like 8 years older than me or something? So I don't remember anything happen. I just remember being really civil. Like, my mom didn't know at the time because I hadn't told her yet. I didn't tell my mom that he did that until a handful of years ago.
Was he your neighbor? Like, how was he in your life?
He was my stepbrother.
Oh.
So my mom was married to his dad,
Bobby?
Charlie. And
how coincidental. I kind of forgot that Charlie.
Yeah, my mom married him, and that was his son. And so we lived in the same household. So he came home from school and I was home, and my mom, being the latchkey kid that I was my whole entire life, she was at work. And so was his dad. So there was a lot of free time for things to go down. And I remember just as vividly as I can see this table in front of me. I remember the assaults on me as a baby child. Like, it's just, so the fact that those experiences happened, and then really, if I was in 4th grade at that time, whatever the age, how old are you in 4th grade? 9?
Probably, yeah,
8,
something
9.
like that.
So, and I remember going back to California for a little bit and then coming back again to Folly Beach right after my 10th birthday. And that was when she was with Bobby. She had actually come back because her Charlie died. Heart attack, like 42 years old. That's what happens when you get up in the morning, drink a screwdriver, and do a line of cocaine. I mean, you're going to circle the drain really quick. So she had come back. We had moved to California. We were going to be out there forever. And I was like happier than a pig in shit because I was around my family again. And she got the call that he died and came back to tend to his ashes and shit, and met Bobby and fell in love, as people do when they're trying to figure themselves out. And I was like, no, God. So here I come back to Folly Beach, and
we also have that in similar in common.
I'm like, I did not want to go back. I was so happy being in California. But then, so as time progresses, somehow, for whatever his fucked up reasons are, felt the need to stay in touch with me and my mom. So again, I babysat for him a couple times. He's got his own daughter who, doing the math, I think, which obviously I feel like, should I say something? Like, over all these years, I'm like, is he doing the same thing to her? Like, so many questions. And I think now, if I had to guess, she's probably an adult at this point. I mean, she's got to be 19, 20 years old. Who knows? So it's just the oddity of the whole thing that I suppressed it so much that I didn't remember. And I can't even honestly tell you right now if I remembered during that time when he came back when I was older. I don't know if I remembered then that he had done it. My first memory of remembering it was in the last decade. And I would be happy to write him a letter, but because I know I could very easily find him, it's not my MO to write a letter knowing that I could find him. If he's dead or something, then yeah. But I feel it brewing, and I have for quite a while, that I will probably do some crazy shit like I do and just video chat him out of nowhere and just tell him to fuck straight off. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I would deal with that. I just know that I'm just at the beginning stages of processing all of that. And like, really, it's where I'm connecting all the dots, because I know that me being fearful of men for my whole life, and operating so badly in connection with men, and my relationships have been so it's why people are like, "You're Harmony, you're so strong and you're so this. How do you get in these relationships with these men that like they basically treat you like shit?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And it's because of the men that have been in my life. They besides my grandpa Weller, who was amazing, but the other men who have been in my life, my dad wasn't in my life, so he doesn't count. He was very much a pushover and very much a really nice guy. But as far as like the men that my mom came in contact with, they were all bullies. And so I didn't learn how to be with men. And all the men that I had close connection to were abusive. So how in the hell was I going to have the wherewithal to stand up for my boundaries or what I wanted in romantic love if I didn't know how to interact with men in a healthy way? And it's just been really bizarre, Alicia, at 46 to connect those dots now.
Yeah.
It's really eye-opening. And so I want people listening to take that. Like, I couldn't be any more connected to growth. I've been doing this growth thing for years and years and years, and dabbling and reading and journaling and asking why and all that stuff. And still just now it's like clicking. So hang in there. Like, keep doing the work, keep doing whatever it is you need to do, and know that your time's going to come. If you just keep investing time in yourself, those epiphanies and those light bulb moments will come, and they'll keep coming like a waterfall, like Niagara Falls. You're going to be like, okay, wait, can I have a breather?
Yeah. That's why it's good to journal, like you said before, journaling so that you can start processing some of that stuff. And sometimes it's going to be so much information, you don't know what to do with it. You can't think about it all at once. You just got to like, okay, let me write this down and I'll think about it later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why I love having these conversations, because it is, I mean, whether we look at it or not, it's two women coming together to do a podcast, but it's also two women who love each other very much, who are very closely connected, bonding, carrying on a conversation and sharing something with the world, and also being helpers. So there's so much healing, you guys. It's not like we're trying to be megastars and podcasts and, oh, look at us, we got podcasts, we're so cool. It's cathartic for me. I love podcasting. I love doing it with the guys. I love doing my Bliss Broker podcast. I feel like it helps me heal because it makes the shit that I went through and the way that I'm learning how to process it every day, little by little, not be in vain.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just, it's a gift to humanity, but it's also a gift to myself selfishly, because I walk through things. I work through shit like you saying, hey, write them a letter, or, journal, or write something down and burn it, whatever. Like it's healing.
Yeah. And, we're turning the pain that we've experienced into, a renewed purpose for our lives. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for a lot of people is they have this pain inside of them. Either they're not dealing with it, or they don't know how to deal with it, or they've dealt with it a little bit, but they're still not doing anything about it. And let us be the people that could at least, give you some ideas and let you know that, hey, we've been through some shit too. And, we're still working on ourselves every single day. I mean, every single day I'm working on myself. I make a decision every day to try to be the best version of myself every single day. And, it doesn't mean that I don't fall down sometimes and, forget to do something or cut my workout short. But I'm really focusing, at least me for the last several months, has been waking up and just trying to hydrate, get a good workout in, get some things done, connect with people in my life that are important, and really focus on my own inner healing and my own journey. As to what it is I want to do in the future. So,
yeah, and I want to talk about that as we carry on with this podcast over time, is, getting to a place where it's all connected. It's all so connected that being able to have the ability to get up and make your bed, drink your water, go to the gym, make all those healthy choices for yourself, those come organically after you've been putting work into yourself. If you're in a space where you don't really like who you are and you have shame and guilt wrapped up in your identity for whatever varying reasons, we've all got a story, you're not going to be like, yeah, I need to take my vitamins, because you don't fucking love yourself. So why, so I'm going to give an example of one of the many ways that I have not processed and not chosen on way deep subconscious level to not deal with all of the pain that was swirling around my body in any given day. The pain's still there, but I just process it now. But one of the ways I did that was disguised as I was in my 20s, and it was what you're supposed to do in your 20s, was party. Like I just was a bartender. I would flip, from serving drinks to the bar stool, and I'd stay there for hours upon hours. And so, but looking back, it was like, oh, that's what you do when you're in your 20s. You party and you socialize and you drink and you go to brunch on Sundays, really hungover, and all the things. But really, there was a whole slew of people that were in their 20s that were not doing that, that were living a very clean, healthy, supported, guided, self-guided life that didn't involve bars. But that was my reality, and so I justified it. I just thought it was just what people did. I just thought that's just the path I'm on. I didn't question it, in other words. I did not question it. And so what for you do you think in the past, over the years, was it that kind of helped self-medicate you? And it doesn't have to be booze, because self-medication are so many, it could be working yourself to death. It could be anything. But was there anything that you have done over the years to suppress your pain?
Well, let me answer it the way that I know how to answer it. So when you say suppress my pain, the way that I definitely had periods of my life where I self-medicated. When I sold my house here when my daughter was a senior in high school, with the intention of following her to whatever college she went to. And I ended up back in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, where I found a place to live. And I was the most unhappy, the lowest point of my life. Now, meanwhile, I have already lost both my parents and my husband. So I have a lot of other times that I've felt low. But this was the absolute lowest of my life, because I had lost my identity. My identity of being a single mom was completely wrapped up in my daughter. And when she was going away to college, I didn't know how to cope with that. So I did what I thought was the right thing to do at the time. Was I chose to follow her instead of the relationship that I was in, the guy that I was dating. And I started over thinking, okay, everything's going to be fine, with no real plan, just that I'm doing this. And couldn't find a job, and she is in college and she's doing the things that she should be doing as a freshman in college. Didn't really have a lot of free time for me, and that's okay, because she needed to do the things that she needed to do in college. But I reconnected with some of my high school best friends who were all married with young kids, and they didn't have a lot of free time either. So I found myself at such a low point, feeling like I had nothing to live for, and I self-medicated every night. I remember just sitting on the couch drinking out of the bottle of wine, just drinking out of the bottle, not even bothering pouring it into a glass, because I felt like there was no point of my existence anymore. I did what I was supposed to do. I survived the loss of all of these people in my life. I raised Maddie. Now she's in college and she's great. There's really nothing else I have nothing really to live for. Like, that's the mindset that I had. And I would walk the bridge every single day. Just walking over the bridge with my headphones in, thinking, gosh, a lot of people do jump off this. I wonder if it hurts, or you just feel that sense of freedom. Like I literally had such a low point, and I would go home at the end of the day and I would sit there and I would start drinking again, until I finally just snapped out of it. There wasn't one moment. I did have some friends that I talked to about it. And it wasn't like an epiphany. It was just, I no longer wanted that anymore. I knew it was not serving myself. So I was definitely suppressing the pain of feeling lost and broken and feeling like I had no point of my existence. First time I'd ever moved back to Charleston after my parents had died, and Pete was no longer there. So I had no home to go home to. And I had all these memories of the two of us falling in love and getting married and starting our first apartment was in Charleston before he joined the military and we moved to Florida. So all of that was
I can't even imagine how triggering that
reminders.
was.
Yeah, it was like I moved and started living in the shadow of my former life, and I hated it. I didn't know what to do, and so I self-medicated and I suppressed
God, that would be
pain.
a good book.
Yeah, I suppressed that pain. Yeah. Living in the shadow of your former life. I say that a lot. And that was, I knew that was not serving me, and I had to do something else. And so that's when I put all my stuff in storage. I came back to Virginia Beach. I lived with one of my friends and for months and just stayed there trying to figure out, okay, what's my plan? What am I doing? I can't do that. That was not serving me because I was self-medicating by just drinking all the time. But on the flip side of that is there anything else that I have used to help deal with the pain that probably a little bit of overuse in my life is exercise. Like, I think I have a healthy balance now, but there was, after Pete died, I know that I exercised a fuck ton. You know, like I used to.
That's an actual measurement, by the way. Not to be confused with shit ton.
You know, my daughter was in preschool when we moved here, and I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't really know anyone. And I was, newly widowed, traumatized, not knowing what to do. So what did I do? I exercised all the time. I went to the gym. I rode my bike. I was very lean and thin. And that was a coping mechanism for me to, I don't want to say suppress the pain, but deal with it. Because I didn't know how to deal with it. There's no guidebook. There are some now, actually. But back then, there was no handbook on how to be a widow while you raise a young kid by yourself with no family. So, my mom was still alive at that point, but she was in Florida and did not want to move here. And I tried to convince her, and I just didn't want to move there. So, I started over, and I know that I used exercise at that point in my life. I wouldn't say to suppress, but more to cope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of people do that, and it's being a socially acceptable and celebrated activity. There's a lot of people hiding under the exercise umbrella, aren't they? Like,
oh yeah,
there's so many things.
I definitely see that. I see that in the gym.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And it's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But at the end of the day, if you're putting any focus into anything for yourself, you can only do the best that you can with what you have at any given moment. You know what I mean? And so I think that's why I'm so passionate about coming and talking about this and showing people the dichotomy that is human existence, because it's fucking hard. I don't care what anybody says. Every day, it's just, from the time you open your eyes up in the morning to the time you go to bed, it's a series of choices. And I got home today, I haven't drank. I don't really drink that much anymore. I haven't drank in like a month, basically. And I went upstairs to make my ice water with lemon. And I saw a few mini bottles that I get, those little Deep Eddies, delicious mini bottles in the freezer. And I was so tempted. Something in my muscle memory, because this isn't the cup that I normally just drink a bottle of water, but I was like, oh, I want some lemon and some ice. And normally I would drink a cocktail in this, but our muscle memory is so powerful that when I went to go open it up and I went to go dump the crushed ice in there and I saw those mini bottles, for a split second, I was like, ooh, that would be so good right now. And I very instantly, just as quick as I made the decision how good it would be, I very quickly just closed the freezer door and was like, not as non-issue, because I want to go running after we're done, but it's interesting how we can so eat, like, we are all potentially one bad disaster away from spiraling out of control. And I think that people have it in their mindset, like personal development is you work, and you do all the things and you find a support system. And then one day you're there. That's it. You've made it. I'm fixed. And boy, that is not the case, because as you know, you take one layer off and you figure that layer out and there's 15 more below it.
Yeah.
It's a never ending layer of things to figure out. So the best thing we can do, the best case scenario, is to support each other, show up and give back the best way you can. And that's what we're doing here with the Folly Girls podcast. And can you believe we've been on for an hour and 8 minutes? I mean, it went by really quick. I knew it would. And I want to try and keep, if you're okay with it, the shows to like an hour-ish.
Yeah, I agree.
And let me put back on here. I've been kind of toggling and playing with these banners since I'm pretty new to StreamYard, but I wanted to, see that people can find us on Instagram. But I so appreciated this conversation today. I'm glad I could be there, because I know Maddie went back to her home state today. And
she drove back to South Carolina today. She's actually still driving. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. What does it take to get from where you are to where she is?
6.5, 7 hours, depending on traffic.
Oh, that's not too bad. So crazy. I've been really thinking about how you said the other day, I haven't even met your daughter. I know I've got to meet her ASAP. Yeah. It'd be so nice to meet her. But I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you being a part of this with me. I'm going to say that every time. And for you guys watching, I'm going to be doing the audio, editing the audio in the background, and getting this up on all platforms. I am in process now, so bear with, of creating the cover art and just getting us to where the ball's rolling easy week to week to week to week. So we will record again, and then these podcast episodes will be coming out for your listening ear everywhere. And in the meantime, you can watch us on YouTube. We will be popping in sporadically for little chit chat sessions live. So if you're not already, please subscribe to the page and click the bell so you know when we are available to chit chat, and you can ask us questions and, get to know us a little bit better. So I guess unless there's anything you want to say to part the podcast, is there anything you want to mention to anybody about anything?
I'm grateful, to be here with you as well. I think this is going to be, it's been a learning experience for us both doing a joint podcast together. And I'm hoping that, as this continues, we'll reach more people. We'll have some more interactions. People could maybe post questions or topics, things that they want to know more about. I would love that going forward. So I'm just grateful to be here and love that we have this opportunity together.
I know. I love it too. You guys share. If there's anybody who you think might be interested in Folly Beach, interested in growth, interested in seeing two chicks that grew up on Folly Beach and had all the experiences and where we are right now, please share. The Folly Girls YouTube channel is brand hammer new. I was looking at it earlier, just tweaking some things on it. There's 0 subscribers. So I'm going to make that a goal for not only you and I this week and weeks to come, but for anybody who happens to be watching this video to please share this page. I don't care if they're just interested in Charleston. Share and share again. And then you'll have an opportunity to be celebrated on the show. So until then, I'm going to hit the end broadcast. Stay with me. Don't hang up. And you guys, we'll see you next recording. Bye.
Bye, y'all.